I call the latest meeting of the Prisoners' Escapee Committee to order, Colonel Weathers announced, bringing his canteen down as a makeshift gavel. General Domain, I understand you have been doing some scouting of the prison, he added, turning to the man who seemed half asleep. Huh? Oh yeah, can't be done, he said, waving his hand as if to waft away the idea. Not at all, Major de Grad asked, his mandibles clicking. Yeah, these Jungmash bastards run a tight ship. We only know one way in and two ways out, Domain replied with a shrug. And these are? Weathers asked. The front door is the only way in, Domain replied with a smirk. And out? Weathers pressed. Front door and feet first in the box with your organs and ceremonial jars. Personally, I prefer the former myself, Domain answered, his smirk only growing. So, escape is a nil, de Grad near whined. We can still do the next best thing. Make their lives miserable. That is the duty of any officer, Domain answered, waving his fingers and leaning back in his chair. Impossible. They would just devour you, de Grad said in a hushed snarl. Your bug race might, but these bastards are sticklers for the rules. They won't willingly break any treaty they're a part of. The written word is gospel to them, Domain explained, sitting up and fixing the Tugnik with a stare. Gentlemen and gentle bugs, please keep this civil, Sergeant Paul called out, placing himself between the glaring pair. How do you suggest we annoy them then, sir? He asked, turning to Domain. I've got a few plans, but one, if we agree to it, I can get it sent up within the week. Domain's eyes gleamed with the promise of mischief. Send what up exactly? Weathers asked, with an arched brow. He still looked over the mountain of paperwork he had been handed a few days ago. It was a request for the prisoners to have permission to build a simple structure in the centre of the exercise grounds. This alone would have been a simple request, but for them to send 72,000 pages in total just for this was shocking. He valued the written word as much as the next of his species, but sending so much and written in human common language made it impossible for him to even imagine successfully translating, let alone read it in the weak time frame law dictated he had to find anything that would give him reason to reject it. What was most frustrating was the front page that highlighted the article in their own law, saying the length of the document could not be used as a reason for dismissal. He had still managed a fair 40% of the submitted document and found no issues. With frustrated reluctance, the alarm he had set activated, and let him know he had no choice but to approve. With a thump of his stamp, he approved the prisoner's request to build a structure, of which purpose he could not fathom, in the middle of the exercise yard. We got approval, gentlemen, Domain said with a grin, as he slapped an approval document down onto the table. Okay, so what is your plan exactly? I know you like tricks, but to keep us in the dark has been concerning, Weathers asked. Simple. We are going to build our own prison, Domain said, with an ear-to-ear grin. But we are already inside prison, de Grad said, confused. Well observed, but the Warden has approved our right to build and run this operation. We have even been granted the right to salvage materials from the local area for our needs. What better materials than the ones containing us? Domain's grin only grew bigger. There was no weakness in the prison layout. I suggest we make our own. If they try to stop us, we can flash this at them, and their rigid compliance with the word of the law will hamstring them. Domain began to cackle like a supervillain in a Hollywood movie. What's stopping the Warden from rescinding the acceptance? Weathers asked. Simple. It can take months for the appeals court to rescind an accepted order. We just had to mess up this prison enough in that time frame. Domain's eyes gleamed as he laid out the next steps of his plan. Warden Estill could feel a fresh headache coming on. The one to blame was not only the prisoners, but himself. The simply absurd document he had approved seemed to be some ridiculous escape plan by the prisoners themselves. He had seen the request to salvage materials to the local area. He had no issue with old barracks that had become more scrap than anything else being repurposed. But the prisoners started tearing down the walls and using them instead. When his guards tried to stop this, they revealed it was not an escape attempt, and merely fulfilled my accepted request. What was most infuriating was the number of the humans who self-identified as lawyers, who seemed actually to know the entirety of the document he had improved. Anytime he had contested something, they could point to the part where it could stop him. Setting up a rescind request, he was informed it would take 3 months to be approved. This was dire, as the prison became less and less secure as the days rolled on. What was crazier was the prisoners seemed to be constructing a small prison. They even took on roles as guards and wardens and the such. Had he not witnessed such an audacious act before his very eyes, he would believe such reports to be false. As time wore on, though, he resigned himself to the fact he would have a black mark on his record. First off, I'd like to thank our legal representatives who got their degrees from an MRE cereal packet, Webers announced, eliciting enthusiastic faux applause towards a pair of privates who were hastily editing the document and swapping pages any time the cleaning staff overheard the warden voicing specific plans to stop them. Next up, General Domain. Please tell us the next step of the plan, he asked, turning to the General, who now wore a pair of aviators and a poorly sewn hat with Wadan stitched onto it. Simple, good sir. We need only wait for prisoners to show up, he said, baring his teeth as he chewed his gum noisily. But no one is going to volunteer to go into that thing, sir, Sergeant Paul announced. Exactly, human, de Grasse snarled. I hope you don't expect me to go in there, he quickly added. Of course not, good sir. Domain's grin was becoming maddening. Our friendly guards are going to be our first prisoners. We need only wait for the rescind to go through, Domain explained, as realization began to dawn on those present. It had finally come through. He'd been able to get the rescind request expedited, and now he had finally sent a cadre of guards to break up the little game of make-believe his prisoners had been playing, and return to normalcy. Warden? A nervous voice asked from behind his door. Enter, it still said, with a smile, expecting that it was a guard with a report the operation had been a success. Thank you, sir. The guard entered with their head hanging low in shame. What happened, guard? It still asked. Well, sir, we went down to dismantle the prison the prisoners had built, and... His voice became a whisper. Speak up, guard, it still near barked. Well, they cited Detention Article 4618, he explained. 46... Surrender weapons upon entering a secure facility? It still shouted in utter shock. Yes, sir, the guard replied, flinching. Corporal Venikar and Nitox, well, they both surrendered their weapons and were arrested and imprisoned, the guard explained, avoiding further eye contact. So we decided to retreat and ask for advice. But it is not a real facility, it still near cried out. Actually, sir, they technically meet all the requirements for founding one, the guard sheepishly replied. Well, I doubt they have. Like a noble must be present and named as the founder of the structure, it still listed off. Seems the Toteki Major de Grad is a continental noble of his species, so they meet the requirements for that field, the guard replied. What about their needing to be a military presence as guards? It still asked. The warden is a famous human general, and the guards are all POWs, not a single civilian member of staff, as it were, the guard explained. It still could feel the black mark on his record growing larger and larger. Right, gather every guard to me, and we will approach them and sort this out right now, it still roared, so loud the windows began to shake. It had been about an hour since a loud and deep roar echoed throughout the entire prison. The whole group had noticed more and more guards began leaving their posts on the wall. Seems you were right, human, de Grasse said, looking at Domain. Indeed, though I didn't think he'd be stupid enough to call everybody, Domain nodded. I am Warden Istill. Open up and surrender yourselves, Istill roared at the gate. I'm sorry, visiting hours are 12 till 1. You'll need to come back tomorrow to come inside. Domain's voice boomed over the wall of their prison. Nonsense! We cannot allow armed prisoners. That violates several articles of the Penal Code. Istill shouted back. We are unarmed, sir. We have confiscated the weapons and locked them in a secure storage locker. The prisoners may retrieve their property upon completing their sentence as your own penal code dictates. Domain shouted back. Insanity! If you refuse to open up, I shall consider this a riot and order my men to use lethal force. He still felt his patience running thin. These humans and their Toteki allies were making a mockery of the law. Very well. Open the gate. Domain's voice boomed, as the gate began to open with a loud clicking noise. Charge in and detain every one of them, it still roared. All at once, his assembled guards all ran with rifles at the ready. The moment they were all in, the gate slammed shut behind them. What is happening? It still cried out in shock. Dunno. Looks like your prison is understaffed though, boss, Domain said with a cavalier tone, as he rested an arm over his still shoulder. Ain't that a violation of a penal code? If I recall correctly, if a prison is negligently understaffed, the prison must cease functioning immediately. Domain's grin shone like a light in the dark. But you were in... Your voice! It still weakly gestured to the prison, where they could hear the guards panicking. Speaker system, my friend. We were pleased to find it in one of the barracks we did break down. The rest is just playing with switches elsewhere, Webers explained, as he approached from Istill's other side. But... Istill fell to his knees in shock. Alright, boys, I want an orderly evacuation from the prison. I believe they have some orbital transport ships around we can use to get home, Domain announced, as he lifted his arm in triumph. How could I lose? Istill asked aloud. Simple, boss. He was so focused on the letter, you didn't notice his bugger, the spirit of the law. The Bane's mad grin was on full display.